Well, it's that time again. It is that time again. August. August! It's over already? Man, we're getting closer and closer to the end of the year as we speak. I can't even believe it. It feels like this year just started yesterday, so... but you know what time it is. It's what I read time. Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Smoky Dude, and I am back with another video about what I read during the month of August. I can't believe August is already over. It felt like it just started yesterday. I just put out my video about what I read in July yesterday, but here we are. We're now in September. We are getting close to the end of the year. We are inching ever closer to the end of the year, and my time is running out on books I want to get to before the year is over, so I better get on to that. But before I do, I want to talk about the books that I did read during the month of August. So, yeah, not really too much else to say aside from... well, it was actually a good month. I read a lot. I managed to get a lot done. It was probably helped by the fact that I had a couple weeks off from doing anything after I got done with my internship. So that probably helped. And I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that internship, and now I have a job over there, so it's been a lot of fun. But enough on the personal stuff. I actually got a lot done. It was a very productive month, and not really much else for me to say. So let's get into the books and comics and even movie that I watched during the month of August. Let's get to it. So the first book that I ended up completing was once again from a good friend of the channel, good friend of mine, and that is Rivers Sing Out by James Wade, who's become a good friend of mine. I read his book All Things Left Wild last year, which I thought was really good. I put it on my top 10 books of the year. How did this book stand up? I like this book quite a bit. This book was really good. Still has that very strong McCarthy influence, so if that kind of will bug people, then, you know, do whatever. But I thought this book was very, very good. I didn't like it as much as All Things Left Wild. I thought All Things Left Wild was a better book overall. But I thought this book was really good. I really liked the characters. James Wade is really good at giving you characters that you can care about and really follow and you can really follow. And even some of the bad guys in this book are, I don't know if I'd say sympathetic is the right word, but you can definitely understand where they're coming from. And even like deep down, there is still some like latent humanity in these characters, even when they're horrible to each other. And it's also just a really interesting take on the like Bonnie and Clyde kind of story. There aren't lovers, it's just a boy and a girl going on a run from very, very dangerous people. And this also kind of reminded me of No Country for Old Men, especially some of the decisions that James makes at the end of the story, which I won't spoil here. And there's also a very McCarthy-esque villain who, you know, likes to monologue about life and all that fun stuff. If you're a fan of McCarthy like I am, pick up James Wade stuff. It's really good. I liked All Things Left Wild a lot more, which you can probably see back there. There it is right there. But I like this book as well. I thought this book was good. If you're a fan of No Country for Old Men, I would definitely recommend picking up this book. It definitely touches on that same vein of growing older and being disillusioned by the world. And also has that crime element. It's very much like a Southern Gothic kind of crime book, which is, you know, type of thing that I really like. It also deals with themes like abuse and addiction and, like, neglect in very, very frank manner that I appreciated. You know, I think James dealt with those themes. I don't want to say, well, I don't want to say he doesn't deal with it respectfully, but he deals with it very authentically. It felt real to me. Yeah, I thought River Sing Out was a good book, and I think people should check it out. People should check James out. I think he's a very talented guy. He's also a very nice guy too. So, you know, just check him out on Instagram. He'll probably talk to you. He's a good dude. Next book I was told by friends of mine, and I made a promise to some certain friends of mine that I would at least read another one of these books before the end of the year, and that is Discworld. Men at Arms, specifically, which is part of the City Watch series of novels that is set within the Discworld saga by Sir Terry Pratchett. So what did I think of this? I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. The beginning of this book was great. Really funny, really fast-moving, very evocative. Hits the ground running, and there's kind of a lull in the middle where it's kind of people just hanging out and, trying to figure out what's going on. And the end is also really, really good, too. This was a really, really good book, though. I really enjoyed this. I do like Guards a little bit more because, sadly, in Men-at-Arms, Vimes is not in this book as much, and I really love Vimes. He's really grown. He's really jumped up as a character that I'm keeping my eye on. But I am told by many of the Discworld faithful that he will be in many of the other City Watch books, which I am looking forward to. Though this book is more of a Carrot story. You see Carrot, that's him right there. In other words, he is not on the cover for no reason. This is very much his story, very much him coming into his own in a lot of ways. He really demonstrates that there is an intelligence to his character. There is a certain a certain wiliness to his character that you wouldn't anticipate. It's as the book says. Most people think of Carrot as simple, which is true, but simple is not the same thing as stupid, and we end up learning exactly what that means in this book. There are some issues I have with the book. It does get a little convoluted in places, particularly when we find out who the perpetrator of the acts of crime in this book actually is. It gets a little confusing. But I'll save a lot of those thoughts for when I do the Discworld Files with Raph and Derry, which we need to set that up soon. I definitely am looking forward to the conversation about Men-at-Arms. But I really liked this book. I really liked about this book that very much like how Guards was very much a parody of like fantasy conventions, dragons, the fantasy narrative, the chosen one, very standard fare that he's kind of poking fun at, along with other things such as, police and society and authoritarianism. In this book, we really get to see that kind of fantasy cop show that I was sold on really come into play here. We actually see the guards, for lack of a better word, actually doing police work. And it's actually really interesting. And I think Terry Pratchett, for as absurd and bizarre as he can get, he's really good at showing people just hanging out. He's really good at depicting normal people, just very silly people at times, but very normal people as well for the most part. Hanging out, getting drinks, talking about life, trying to figure out what this thing is that's going on, because there have been these string of murders that have been happening, and of course, murders don't really happen in Discworld, at least not anymore. There are suicides, of course, but there's not any murders. But the guys end up figuring out what's going on. There's some really clever stuff in here that I don't dare want to give away, because again, I want to keep my more spoilery thoughts for the Discworld Files. But this had some really, really clever moments, really, really thought-provoking moments. Definitely even more thought-provoking than Guards. Even though I preferred Guards, not just because of, Vimes was in it, and I really liked Vimes, but I really liked Vimes' journey in that book. And we really kind of get that journey with Carrot in this book as well. We see him kind of grow into his own, become a more mature, was he immature in the book? I don't think he was immature in the first book, but he becomes more wizened to the world, we should say. And there's also even some more discussion. It was kind of explored a little bit in Guards, but it really comes in the full front here about the nature of power and where power comes from, and kind of that idea of the divine right of kings also comes into play here, especially with Vetinari as he kind of begins to look a little closer into things. Again, I'm really trying to keep this as vague as possible. But Men-at-Arms, in some ways, is better than Guards, but in many ways is... I liked Guards a lot more. Again, I really liked Vimes. And I am told, like I said, by the Discworld faithful, that there will be more Vimes in the future, so I am looking forward to that. But I did really like Men-at-Arms, and I am very much looking forward to talking about it with Raph and Derry, because... they were very patient with me as I was going through my reactions to this book, and it was fun talking with them on the last episode of Discworld Files. So give Men-at-Arms a shot. I am really being sold on Discworld now. I guess I'm a fan now, so I'm an official Discworld fan. So And the Discworld fans are great, so just to let you know, some of the sweetest fans you'll ever meet. Very patient with a newbie such as I. But yes, Man-at-Arms, good stuff. Really liked it. So yeah, this might have been my book of the month, actually. Next book I have was a nonfiction book, is one that I wanted to pick up for a while, and then I finally did, and that is Difficult Men by Brett Martin. This is a book that a lot of people, a couple friends of mine had told me about, a couple friends of mine, mainly on Goodreads, sorry, telling me to read. This is a book about very many of the great shows that have come out in the last several decades, such as The Sopranos, The Wire, Breaking Bad, The Shield is mentioned in this. Many shows that are favorites of mine. Mad Men is discussed, which I've never been able to really get into that show. Many other shows of that kind are discussed, but mainly it's about the men who made those shows. So, like David Chase created The Sopranos, David Simon created The Wire, David Milch created Deadwood. There's a lot of Davids in this book. Vince Gilligan created Breaking Bad. Many other people are recommended in this, and this was a really interesting book, kind of about the history of television and how television kind of grew into the point where we ended up getting shows like The Sopranos, like Breaking Bad, like The Wire, that are these like really boundary-pushing, very artful shows, if you want to say, pieces of art, if you want to say, rather than just another TV show. As for Difficult Men, I should also note that this book was not called Difficult Men for no reason. There are a couple guys in this book who I probably would never want to hang out with or talk to in any sort of fashion, because they do not seem like very nice people. With exceptions, Vince Gilligan, who created Breaking Bad, actually seems like a really cool guy. But that's beside the point. But yeah, a lot of the people in this book are either neurotics, massive jerks, or absolutely insane. You got to read the David Milch chapter in this. It is absolutely bonkers, some of the stuff that he gets up to. But yeah, this was a good book. I don't really have much more to say about it. It was very engaging, very delightful, very informative, I thought. And, I mean, I really don't have anything else to say about it. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed reading it as someone who enjoys a lot of the shows that are being talked about here. And I do recommend this for people who like these shows as well. Even Mad Men, even though, again, I've never really been able to get into Mad Men, just not really my thing. But yeah, give this book a try. It's really, really good. So, yeah. Next and last book that I have on this list here is The Time Machine. Yes, I reread The Time Machine. I actually read this for a class. I was given the task to read this book over the course of several weeks, and I'm like, screw it, I'll just knock it out. And I did. This was a favorite of the Summers household when I was a child. I really enjoyed reading this. I have very, very vivid memories of reading this book and just being enthralled by it. I read a couple of other H.G. Wells books, like The Invisible Man, which is another favorite of mine. And I decided to read this book as well to see how well it holds up. I mean, it was written in the 1890s, I think. So, you know, it is going to age, and it certainly has aged. But I still think this book has held up. The storytelling is very crisp. The ideas are very thought-provoking. And there's even some really solid emotional moments in this, especially towards the end. I really think the ending of this book is what makes The Time Machine so good, at least to me. There's this kind of melancholy about the ending. I've never really been able to explain it. It's kind of like watching the end of The Searchers. Like, yes, that film has a ostensibly happy ending, but there's this just sense of sadness by the end that you just can't explain for whatever reason. And I really can't say much more about The Time Machine that hasn't already been said before. It is a classic of the time travel stories, and one of the best, if you ask me. And still holds up very well, though a lot of it is a guy describing, you know, what he's going through. And some modern readers might be thrown off by some of the language in this. There's no, like, N-words or anything like that, but there are some moments that have definitely, let's just say, have not aged as well. There's one scene in particular where the time traveler describes time traveling kind of like a black guy native African coming into English civilization. That could definitely rub some people the wrong way. But aside from that, this is a really good book, and it's not very offensive. It could have been worse, which that sounds bad, but it's a good book. I enjoyed it a lot, and I still really enjoy it to this day. So yeah, it still holds up, and I think everyone who at least is interested in science fiction as a genre should give The Time Machine a read. It's not very long. My copy is about 143 pages, I think. Give it a crack. It's really good stuff. So yeah. On to comics. I only read, 4 technically, but 2 in terms of series. And the first one that I read was for my Year of Lemire read for August, and that is Frogcatchers. This is kind of a weird... I don't really know how to describe this book. It's kind of a weird, kind of surreal book about death. Yeah. It's very much, it kind of feels like a short story in a lot of ways. It's not very long. You could easily get through this in like a day. I don't know if it's one of my favorite Lemire works, but I do think it does show some of the bigger strengths of Lemire. I really like the visual storytelling in this book, like right here. I really like how it flows. Jeff Lemire is very good at that, especially in his creator-owned stuff. I really like how... I really like the fluidity of the pacing of his work. I really like how he allows the panels to move in a way. Like they're not really moving, but it kind of gives that sense that it's moving. It's very much like a kind of Will Eisner. Even Frank Miller was to his credit was very good at this in letting the panels breathe, and not have like these texts and texts of dialogue. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but, that can definitely throw off some people. But I do appreciate the less is more approach when it's done well. Like you can see, not very much dialogue in this, which is really well done. So I liked this book a bit, but it was just kind of short, and it was kind of basic, to be honest. It didn't really impress me in any particular way, and in the way that many of his best works do. But it is a very good story, and I don't really have a lot of problems with it. It's Jeff Lemire doing Jeff Lemire things. I can't really, say too much more aside from that. So, yeah, Frogcatchers, good stuff. I'll just put this down, because, again, there's not really much else to say about that. The other comic I read, which is probably going to surprise some of you, because it does contain what I think might be the best comic that I have read this year, and that is Battlefields by Garth Ennis and a bunch of other people, such as Carlos Esquera of Judge Dredd fame, P.J. Holden, there was a couple of others, Russ Braun, who he worked with on The Boys, which was kind of funny when I read some of the story, when I read some of the stories with his arcs. I just kept thinking of The Boys, because he did a lot of The Boys when Derek Robertson couldn't do it. But there were a couple characters who kind of looked like Billy Butcher, which was kind of weird. But aside from that, Battlefields by Garth Ennis is Garth Ennis doing what he does best, which is war stories. And this might be the best comic I've read this year. At least one of them, and that is called Dear Billy, which is the second story. And I read the 3 kind of omnibus volumes, if you want to call the complete collections, if you will, called, I think they're called the Complete Collections, I believe. There's 3 of them. You can find them on Amazon. But in the first volume, the second story in it is a story called Dear Billy, and it is one of the most crushing, heart-wrenching things that Garth Ennis has ever done, and it is one of the best things that Garth Ennis has ever done. And he makes it look effortless. It reaches deep, and that's something that Garth Ennis is really good at, is really looking inside the dark heart of human beings and really showing what's inside. And Dear Billy in particular is a very moving story about how trauma eventually ruins your life, and just how war can ruin lives in more ways than one, not just that you watch people get blown up around you, but, the civilians also have a really hard time, and that's actually what the story of Dear Billy is about. And it's also a very tender love story. It's a very beautifully told love story. with the titular Billy and this lady. I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but utterly heart-wrenching. Brilliant storytelling from Garth Ennis. Really, really, really good stuff. And there's stuff like that all over Battlefields, especially the Night Witches arc, which a lot of people consider the best of that particular run. And I have to agree. It's really, really good stuff. It is about female soldiers, female pilots of the Soviet Union who fought during World War II. And the way they were treated is quite fascinating, but also seeing the old-fashioned attitudes of a lot of the men who fought alongside these people. And there's also a trilogy that is illustrated by Carlos Esquera that is called The Tankies, which could be a little hard to get into at first because the main character is a guy named Styles, who is this very, very thick Scottish, has this very, very thick Scottish accent, and Ennis writes his dialogue phonetically, so that might be a little hard to read for some people. But if you just think of like Train Spotting, you think of how they talk, you'll get into it eventually. But all three are really great stories. There are some really powerful moments in each story, particularly in the first Night Witch's story in the first volume that has some really great moments. And it really shows what Garth Ennis can do really well, which is kind of showcasing the humanity of people who are in war and kind of the weird shit that comes up with it, a lot of the dark stuff that happens in war. And again, with Dear Billy, might be one of the best comics, one of the best reads I have had this year. Just utterly, utterly powerful stuff. I remember I was just so aghast by what I had just, maybe aghast is the wrong word, but I was so just shell-shocked by what I had just read. I had to put it down for a minute and get me a drink, you know? Get me thirsty. But yeah, no, that's really, it is really, really sad. Like, trigger warnings, there is violence in this, graphic violence that's a given in Garth Ennis' stories. There are very raw depictions of trauma, raw depictions of rape. It is not for the faint of heart. So if you are very squeamish to that kind of stuff, don't read Battlefields. But if you can put aside your discomfort for that, it's a really, really good read. Battlefields is Garth Ennis at his best, and it might be some of the best comics I've read this year. Dear Billy especially. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Last thing I'll talk about briefly, I watched a movie in August, and that is the Catholics versus Convicts, the 30v30 documentary. My dad finally got me to watch it. I've been wanting to watch it for a while, and I finally did, which is about the very infamous Notre Dame versus Miami game in the 1988, I think, the 80s, 1988. I believe it's 1988. But that is when Jimmy Johnson and the Miami Hurricanes went against Lou Holtz and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to play a very legendary game that would end up making the rounds, basically, and was eventually called Catholics versus Convicts because of a bunch of T-shirts that were made for the event. And it's about the people who made the shirt. It's about the game. It's about the history leading up to the game. Really, really, really fun documentary. I really enjoyed it a lot. I don't know if it's quite up there with some of my favorite documentaries, like Jodorowsky's Dune, for that matter. But if you're a fan of college football like I am, or if you're just a fan of good documentaries, this one's a good one. I really enjoyed it a lot. And if you're just a fan of like college sports, give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. And it's nice hearing from personalities like Lou Holtz and Jimmy Johnson as well, seeing that like fierce competitiveness that those men had and still have now, particularly Jimmy Johnson. And also just the irony, just the massive irony about some of the stuff that's going on here, especially with some of the main players. I don't want to say characters because they're real people, so I'll just say players, even though that makes them sound like criminals. I'm sorry. But it's a good movie. I enjoyed it a lot, so... yeah, that's basically all I read and watched during the month of August. Best comic I've read this year in Dear Billy. It is genuinely some of the most heart-wrenching stuff, some of the most moving stuff that Garth Ennis has ever written. And that is saying a lot, because he definitely can tug on the heartstrings very well. Really, really good stuff. So, yeah, anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. If you want to follow me, I am on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I'm starting to get the hang of Blue Sky. I haven't gotten quite there yet, but I'm starting to get there. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe. As my friend John Min likes to say, it feels good when you do it. And, not really much else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and until next time, see you guys later. Bye-bye.